you how the game is played. Here we go again.
Welcome back, guys, to another playoff preview here. We are into the semifinals this week. We also have our top two seeds back in action after their bye weeks from last week. Our winners from the quarterfinals or the first week of the playoffs were David and Ryan. David came out ahead with a 9-point win. I would say mostly in part thanks to Eric's call on his X Factor and David switching up his kicker, but more on that later. David took the lead early Sunday and never gave it up to Aaron as he came up just short of a comeback when Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool combined for 8.5 points only, and his kicker Lutz netted a 0 after missed field goals. In our other quarterfinal matchup, we had Ryan beating Brennan, and he immediately took his cash that was owed him and called off any notions of wedding bells. Sad, sad day. It was a tough day for Brennan as Henry had a playoff winning type game and Hawkinson continued his hot streak, but his workhorses in Allen and Thielen couldn't do enough to propel Brennan into the next round for this year's playoffs. As far as our top two seeds go, let's take a quick peek into their playoff history. Corey, he's the number one seed this year. He's had some success, making the playoffs for the third time after this season, but he has only made it out of the first round one time. This year he defaults into the second round thanks to his guns for hire trade and taking advantage of an unaware owner. Michael, his history, he's made the playoffs for the third time this season as well, with a bit more success once he got in. This is actually the third year in a row for Michael making the playoffs, so he's a little bit on a hot streak there. His best finish was second in 2018. Last year he finished third. Since those were only two new guys jumping in for the playoffs, why don't we take a look at our semifinal matchups and see what our guest analyst Eric thinks of them. Hey Eric, thanks for coming back on. Glad we could actually get the audio working this time. Before we dive into it, I just want to say congrats on going 1-1 last week with getting the David prediction right, but just missing out on Brennan.
Hey Daniel, yeah, thanks for having me.
Question number one for you. Any thoughts on Corey's drafted roster versus his current roster that he has right now?
Ooh-wee! That's a nice roster. Truly a masterful job there. Did Corey have 4 first-round picks? This team is stacked, and it looks exactly the same, strength-wise, now as it did draft day.
Corey/you did an amazing job getting Cook and Hill back-to-back at the end of the first round. Russell Wilson in the 6th was pretty nice to fall to Corey as well. Outside of Hill, though, I think he drafted pretty weak wide receivers, but he's been able to fix that with that trade, or whatever you want to call it, to help even out his team, and picking up Jefferson off the waiver wire was pretty nice. My second question for you actually is in regards to Corey's team still. The league wanted to know if you were open to consulting or puppeting any other playoff teams next season. I know a couple of us at the bottom of the league could use some help. If we could get an even playing field for anyone else that needs it, or some performance-enhancing substances such as yourself to help us out, as a commissioner, I'd be willing to look the other way for a bit if it helps increase the league's popularity and, just our competitive balance.
You know what, Daniel? I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Help will be given to those who ask for it at Hogwarts. My contract does expire at the end of the season, and I'm looking to get a Supermax deal come this spring. I'm wanting 2 6-packs, PBR or PBR Light.
Eric, if that's the case, I've been at the bottom of the league now 2 years in a row, so I'll have a pallet coming your way before the start of next season if that's what it takes to help me end this run. Looking at both these teams, I feel like David's a pretty big underdog against Corey. A David versus Goliath matchup, if you will, as I see it. Corey has Hill and Cook as 2 stars on his team. So what does David need to do or have happen to even grab an upset here against Corey?
It's true. My team, Corey's team is a juggernaut. But we can't forget, David has Bustin' Justin Herbert. Oh, and Mike Evans. Yeah, Mike Evans. So there's that. There's a chance he can win this. I'd give him decent odds too. Probably the same as Logan Paul knocking out Floyd.
I like those odds, Eric, because all that means is that there's still a chance. What's your prediction, you think, on who's going to win this matchup?
Oh, Corey's going to whip his ass.
As much as I would love David to beat Corey and teach him a lesson, I think Corey just has too much firepower as well. Cook was a top 5 MVP candidate just a few weeks ago, and the tandem of Jefferson, Hill, and Thomas at wide receiver, I think is going to just be too much scoring, I think, for David to overcome that. So I'm actually thinking Corey probably wins by over 20 points here this weekend. So on to our other semifinal matchup. It's actually against two teams that have gotten pretty close to the end and getting that championship, but I've come up just short. We have Michael versus Ryan here. We looked over Ryan's draft and current roster last week, so I'm only going to ask you, what do you think of Michael's drafted team versus his current roster?
Michael looks like he has a really strong roster. If Corey's team was the Sun, his team might be Jupiter. David's would be Uranus. But seriously, Michael's team is really, really good.
Yeah, I think Michael did a pretty good job drafting as well. He had Kamara fall to him at 4 and follow that up with Jacobs in the 2nd round. He also stole Allen in the 6th. Grabbing Tannehill off the waiver wire made his team probably a top seed in my opinion this year. Next question for you. Who do you think has the best player in this matchup, and who would that player be for you?
Kelsey is up there, and so is Kamara. I'd probably say Kamara by a slim margin. And if Breeze comes back this week too, he just gets that much better. So I'd say Alvin.
I'm going to lean towards Travis Kelce, I think, on my end. He gives Ryan a real advantage in the tight end matchup, and he'll be playing against a team the Chiefs can score against in the Saints. If Breeze was back healthy, I'd probably lean towards Kamara like you are, but he's been down a little bit with Hill at QB the last few weeks. What's your prediction going to be for this matchup, Eric? Who do you think comes out on top?
You know what? I'm smelling an upset here. I think it's Ryan's year to make it into 2 fantasy football championships. And I think he wins one of them. I really hope he wins one of them. Just one of them. Not the other.
You know what, Eric? I think I agree with you. I think that Ryan actually pulls off the upset in a close game against Michael. I like the matchups for Kelce, Woods, and Rodgers a bit more than what Michael has. Michael has some good players like Allen and Tannehill on his roster, but I don't know if they are going to have the ability to go above their scoring ceiling like some of Ryan's guys can. Last question for you here, Eric. I'm actually still stuck with my tuxedo rental now that Ryan called off the big event for us. Should we just go ahead and return them, or should we dress up for a fancy looking night on the town? Maybe go to Lions, like you said, Denny's, down by Doco? Who knows?
Daniel, I'm feeling another upset. I'd hang on to that tux. I can see it coming in handy really soon, especially if he wins it all, I hear. Possibly a Boise State moment, perhaps? And I think we should get David a new one, since the last time I saw him in one, it got really muddy and really pukey.
You know what, Eric? That sounds like a great plan. Can't wait to be able to suit up again. I'll make sure to see if I can get David an extra one, maybe even 2 this weekend. Look forward to talking to you next week as we cover the championship. Hopefully our predictions remain true like we did last week. Have a good weekend, man. I'll talk to you soon. Alright guys, well, that's at the end of our show here for the semifinals. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you enjoyed Eric's commentary as well. I really enjoy having him on. Good luck to the 4 teams in it. Hopefully the rest of us will just suck less next year so we can be in it. And go Browns!
Daddy Podcast.
It was 1950 in the cold and rain when my father took me to my very first game. Said the Browns are gonna show you how the game is played. Here we go again.